We are going to look at some learning targets from Activity 6 as a review. So it says relate the domain and range of a function to its graph. So remember, domain is our x values, our input, our independent variable. So we look horizontally from left to right. Range is our y values, our outputs, our dependent variables, so we look vertically up and down. Okay, so I'm going to draw on a graph. Let's go up by ones. And we're going to label this hours. And then here I'm going to go up by twos. And this is going to be miles. Now I'm going to try to draw this as best I can. Start here. Go up. I'm going to come back down. I'm going to go all the way back up. And come back down. Let's make that graph go all the way to 7. Okay, let's look at domain and range. So domain, this is where we look at our x values. And we're going to write it in set notation. So that means I'm going to have my fancy bracket, variable x in the middle. And we look at our x values, so horizontally from left to right. So I start here, and I end all the way at 7. So furthest to the left, we begin at 0 hours, and we end at 7 hours. So our range, remember we look at our y values. Again, set notation, so fancy bracket. So we're going to look vertically up and down. So low to high. So if I'm looking, I'm at 2, and it goes all the way up to 16. So my lowest y value is down at 2, and the highest is up at 16. Identify and interpret key features of graphs. So let's do absolute minimum. And let's do absolute maximum. And what do we know about these two things? We know that they can be endpoints. And we also know that they match our range values. Okay, so if I'm looking here, my absolute minimum, my lowest point, no matter where it occurs, is down at 2. My absolute maximum, my highest y value, no matter where it occurs, is up at 16. All right, my y-intercept. That's where your graph touches or crosses your y-axis, and it's always at 0, comma, that y value. So if you're looking, it occurs right there at 4. The next part I want you to write down, is this graph continuous or discrete? This graph is continuous. And in your own words, write down why. All points are connected by a curve. All right, we could draw this graph without picking up our pencil. So continuous because the points are connected. Okay, next let's look at relative minimum and relative maximum. What do we know about these? They cannot be endpoints. And remember, we're looking for hills and valleys, high points and low points throughout our graph. So let's see. I'm going to look at a relative minimum first, which is a valley, kind of like a U shape. I have one right here at 2, and that counts because it's not an endpoint, so I'm going to write down 2. And then it kind of looks like I have another one right there at 8. So I write down 2 or 8. And I just like kind of draw a line over to see what number it occurs at. Or you could use a ruler. Relative maximum, we're looking for a hill. So here's one up at 16. And do you see another one? Right here. Between 10 and 12, so I'm going to say 11. Some of you might say 10. All right. 2 or 8, and then 16 or 11. The last two terms that we talked about in our book, independent variable, dependent variable. Variable means letter. Okay? Independent is our input, our domain values. So that would be X. And what does X stand for right here? Stands for hours. My dependent variable depends on the X. So that would be your Y. That's your output, your range. And if I look at my graph, it stands for miles. So the number of miles that I've driven depends on how many hours we've been driving.